What's up? It's Matt. We're back with another restaurant expert roundup. Today we got a deep dive with a past guest, Steven, Woolco Foods up in New York. We'll be back in a second. There we go. What's going on, Steven? How are you?
I'm doing well, Matt. How are you?
Living the dream, brother. Just out running around, filming restaurants, filming content, trying to help restaurant owners tell their stories, which I think is the most missed opportunity this day and age with restaurants. How is New York and New York City?
Thank God, Matt. New York is doing real well. The past several months, we've seen a major uptick in volume. And I would say that this year, what we're going to see, which we didn't see last year, is a lot of people that were able to go on vacation and get away are going to start coming back into the city. In fact, they've already started. Public schools open up this week, private schools open up this week. So it has that, traditional September feel of everybody getting back to the city with the US Open going and all that stuff. So, so far so good. Our business is located in Jersey City, which is just 1 mile outside of New York through the tunnel, but same vibe there as well.
Yeah, I think I told you this last time we talked. We went camping one time in Jersey City, a little campground down by the marina. And people say, Matt, you're crazy. There's not a campground in Jersey City. I'm like, well, there is. It's right behind the marina, and there's like 30 RV spots. We camped there for 3 or 4 days. Jersey City's great.
It really is, and it's getting better every day. Yep.
That's good to hear. So, talking business, talking the restaurant biz, what are a couple things you've seen the past 12 to 18 months that restaurants need to really adapt to go to the next level? Like one thing I saw, and that's been one of the reasons we really pushed hard on our America's Best Restaurants TV show idea, is I saw that not enough restaurants have a personal connection with their customers. That's a huge thing inside the restaurant, but I call it the digital table touch. That I've heard other people say that. You're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, you're on YouTube. You do a great job of creating content for your company. That's been something I've seen, that restaurants just don't tell that story enough. What are a couple things that you see that restaurants really need to address as we move forward?
I think that's a really good question. And what I would say is that over the past 12 to 18 months, restaurants throughout the country, and certainly in our market, have had the opportunity to create a much more meaningful and impactful relationship with their customers. And I think prior to the pandemic, the business that the restaurants were in, they would almost, I'm not saying this in all cases, but when everything is smooth and everything's normal, it's just natural to take things for granted and not be aware of how precious certain things are. And I think people became aware of that. And so I think the most important thing going forward is that restaurants use that connection, respect that connection, and interact with their customers in a new way. I think one of the ways to do that is what you just alluded to: create meaningful content that engages their customers. Everybody loves the restaurant space on every different level. Sorry about that, Matt. Everybody loves the restaurant space on every level, so there's a lot of different ways to create content there. And I think that's important. But I also think it's important for restaurants to continue to communicate with their customers, either through email, through digital video thank yous. Just really respect that relationship and change the way they interact so that it's much more of a human-to-human, friend-to-friend dialogue and a little less transactional. Because I think that's something that really occurred, and I think it's very special, and I don't think it's something that should be discounted going forward.
Yeah, and I think what's beautiful about it, I agree with everything you said there, Stephen, is that not very many people are doing it. When I equate it to table touches. I go to a lot of restaurants. I eat out a lot, and I'm amazed that I'd say literally 8 out of 10 8 out of 10 don't even come by and ask you how you're doing. But of the ones that do ask you how you're doing, it's insincere. There's no relationship. It's just they're checking a box. And then when I look at that digitally, when I look at saying thank you via emails, having conversations on Facebook and Instagram, a lot of restaurants aren't doing it. Now, granted, I understand they're understaffed and they're undertrained in some of the digital aspects, but it's not hard. It's not hard to learn it. I'm sitting here right now on an iPhone in the back of our Sprinter van, with a portable light and a tripod that together probably cost $30. And doesn't take a genius to figure out how to click go live on a device and to put a light in front of you so that I'm visible. You're the same way. You're well lit. You got your audio's fine. Everything looks good. That's to me a missing component that restaurants want to have meaningful conversations with their customers. Well, the best way to have those is to start them and start by telling your story. I mean, especially if you're a chef, man. I know chefs aren't the people that want to be on camera all the time, but I'd be setting up a tripod in my kitchen every day and getting on there at 9 a.m. and saying, hey, what's up, customers? What's up, fans? Chef Matt here. Here's what we got going on today. Love to see you. Here's what's going on in my personal life. I mean, you can do some unique things there.
I completely agree. And just to follow up on what you're saying, the single most important element in any communication, particularly the one that you're talking about, which is, the communication between a business and their customers or prospective customers, is authenticity. You can have the most beautifully produced, beautifully lit, expensive production. And if your message is insincere and clearly insincere, it's going to be harmful. If you're communicating value and authenticity, people are going to engage with that. There's an old saying, words that come from the heart enter the heart. And so I completely agree with you. I think a lot of times people get hung up on certain aspects of I remember watching an interview with somebody, and the interviewer asked the content creator, what does it take for you to create great content? And the creator said, well, I don't get to decide that. The audience does. It's not for me to decide what's great content. It's for the audience. So that's why I circle back on authenticity and sincerity as being the key ingredients. And if you do that, people are going to want to listen to what you're saying, and they're going to want to engage with you.
And that's what I like about doing content on an iPhone. It's more authentic. It's not like it's staged. It's not like, you or I both had this elaborate setup for this interview to do it. It wasn't like we went through some scripting process or some pre-meeting. It was literally pop on here and talk. And that's the same in the restaurant business. I think, to me, that's also the same when it's inside the restaurant. I did a video about a week or two ago. I was at a restaurant near my house that I walked in, and they asked everybody, hey, how you doing? And I asked the guy, I said, can I give you some feedback? He said, yeah. I said, take that out of your vocabulary. What do you mean? I said, you don't actually give a shit how I'm doing. Like, it's just, you're saying it to everybody. Ask me something that sparks a conversation, about the heat outside, about the rain, about maybe why they're in today. Is there a special reason you came in today? Do something to start a conversation so that you can actually engage. Because I think too many times when we make a post on Facebook, when we send an email out, when we talk to a customer at their table, it's just to check off a box versus what can I do in a sincere way to say hello or say thank you.
And we also have to remember that it's the hospitality industry, which means that as important as the food and the cocktails and the ambiance are, the feeling of being in a hospitable, welcoming environment is so important. And as you were talking, it got me thinking about something that probably the single most important thing or the single most valued thing that people missed during the pandemic were all the human connections that they were deprived from having when they couldn't have them. So, for example, on Facebook this weekend, I saw tons of videos posted about the entry music for the football teams during college stadiums. And the stadiums were just absolutely exploding with enthusiasm because everybody was together and all that. Well, it's the same thing for the restaurants. It's a more intimate setting, but it's the exact same thing. Don't forget that it's the hospitality industry, and that what people want, I would argue, as much, if not more, than the great meal or the great cocktail, is a meaningful connection. And that can be created, just as you're saying, not by checking off boxes, but by sincerely asking someone how you're doing, or maybe just asking them a question. If you see something that they're wearing that intrigues you, ask them about that, whatever. But make it real and make it human, because that's what people want, and people can tell when it's not there and it's not real.
Yeah, I think something that kind of a double-edged sword, if it's the right term, but the thing that happened over the past 18 months was, especially where you're at in New York, restaurants were closed down for a much extended time than they were down here where I'm at in Northern Kentucky. But you get people that for 4, 5, 6 months, a server that didn't wait on a table. And so they became out of practice a little. I actually heard from friends of mine that were servers and wait staff that said, man, it was kind of taxing from a depression almost. Like I thrive off those conversations and off that energy and off seeing people here on their anniversaries and seeing people here on first dates and seeing people celebrating birthdays, celebrating work promotions. And now it's a brown bag with a staple and a receipt on it out the door. And so they kind of miss that, but then you get back into it. It's like, okay, you gotta, get the rust off. You got to figure out, okay, what did I do before? How do I do it? How do I re-engage? And it's even tougher now because, to be quite honest with you, a lot of those people too are way overworked. I talked to a buddy of mine in the restaurant the other day. He's like, Matt, 100-hour work week for most of my key people is about average right now because we can't find anybody. And he said, I gave a speech to my team the other day. I said, hey, I know we're all overworked. We're enjoying the money. That's not going to be wrong there, but we're also looking forward to we get back to 50, 60, 70-hour weeks, which sounds crazy to think that's a low week, but they're looking forward to it. He said, I gave him a little Super Bowl talk, a speech, a pep talk before a football game, and said, hey, we're tired. It's tough, but guess what? When somebody walks in here, it's a Super Bowl. It's your one chance. You never know they're coming back. This might be the first time they've eaten out in a year. This might be the last time they eat at our restaurant. We got to make sure we have our game face on and we're our best. We can't be rusty.
100%. And the great servers, the great bartenders are the ones that really missed having the opportunity to engage with and connect with their customers. And I think you're right. And one of the things that I tell my team, because it's the same, within my organization, the ramp up in demand was phenomenal. Everybody's busting their ass. But I say this is a far better problem than what we had to deal with 18 months ago. And so once you put it in perspective and you remind people, perspective's a huge thing, but I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's one of those things that needs to be reinforced and reminded because, as you say, there's a lot of exogenous pressures on these restaurants right now, and people are working their tails off. But it's a better problem to have, and just something that we've got to work through and, quite frankly, enjoy and appreciate because it's a good thing. It's a good problem, as I see.
So a question / promotion for you I want to ask is the podcast. Outside of The Man in Orange, what's a podcast that stands out to you the past couple months that people need to tune into? It's you can go to woolcofoods.net/podcast to find it. I guess tell us about the podcast and then maybe an episode or two, a guest that you think people might really get a lot of value out of.
I appreciate that, Matt. So I have a podcast called The Profitable Table, fed by Woolco Foods. And I started it because there's a ton of content out there which is very engaging about recipes and stuff that's really geared towards the foodie aspect of the restaurant business. But there's a whole other aspect to the business which is both essential and, in my mind, fascinating, which is the business side of things. And so what I did is I created a podcast where I've had the opportunity to speak with the premier chefs, owners, hoteliers, mixologists, yourself on an episode, and really engage the aspects of the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry that are more business related. And so that it really creates value for people that are in the industry. Although I will say, thank God, we've picked up an amazing following of just startup entrepreneurs who like the content. There's a lot of great episodes, and I say they're great not because of me, but because of the guests that I've had. But I think a couple that stand out is one, the interview with Eugene Cleghorn of Super Burrito. Super Burrito is a phenomenal concept in Rockaway Beach, and what Eugene and his partner Sam and their team did was phenomenal. That stands out for me. And then another one, John Daugherty. Sorry about that. John Daugherty, who was the former executive chef of the Waldorf Astoria, and now he's the owner of Black Barn Restaurant in New York. His insights in terms of managing a team and how he grew as a manager, I would say that interview and the one with Franklin Becker were really great because you see guys that are at the ultimate top of the pyramid, so to speak, in terms of being prestigious chefs. And they're really very honest on how they learned and improved in managing people. And I think it's just extremely valuable for any type of business or just in life in general.
Awesome. Yeah, I wanted to find out that because you do I'd say this not just because you're on here, you do a great job with the podcast because you're a good interviewer. When I went through college for broadcasting, I had a class on interviews, and they talked about the importance of a great podcast is a great interviewer. So you do a great job there. So that's all I got for you today. Woolcofoods.net/podcast. Check out Steven. Check out what he's got going on there. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt. Have a great day.
You too.